Hi, there we are. Hello, hello. Welcome Sunday afternoon. I don't know what you're doing. It's been a lazy day for me, but I wanted to spend a few minutes of it with you. I didn't see you a lot this week. I usually try to come on a couple of times, three times every week. And this week was a busy week, and I took my son back to school and then got caught up. So here we are on Sunday, and I'm doing some work with a client today. We're doing some emotional clearing work, and it made me think of this topic that I want to talk to you about. So if you're listening, please say hello. This is streaming in, I don't know, 5 places. So if I see the comment, I'll respond. If I don't, I'll check back later. But thank you for spending a little bit of your afternoon with me today. And I wanted to talk about autoimmunity, and the spiritual connection to that. I don't know if you realize this. There's like 80 million people who have an autoimmune condition. 80 million people. Three of those, or 3/4 of those, for every one man, there's 3 women. So about 3/4 of those 80 million are women. And many people who have autoimmune conditions have more than one, have been diagnosed. I was diagnosed with 4. So I've done a lot of research on autoimmunity. I've learned a lot. I've been on this journey for quite a while. And so as I'm doing this work today for my client, we're doing some emotional clearing. That's something that I do with clients, is help get stuck emotions out of their body. And we were talking about what she wanted to focus on. And she wants to focus on codependency with her husband. So as I'm thinking of 80 million people, 3/4 of them being women having autoimmune conditions, I'm also thinking of how many people have codependency showing up in their life. I don't know what the number to that is. I don't know if anybody has the number for that, but I do know it's a big number. I do know that it's a really common way that people go through their life. And there's a link to that. There's a link with our spirit, with our wholeness in our spirit, that shows up not only in our physical body, like autoimmune conditions, but also in our relationships, like codependency. So that's how I'm tying it all together. So if you have any thoughts, if you have any questions, if you have experience in this, if you have autoimmune conditions or know someone who does, if you know anything about codependency, please drop a comment. I would love to know what your input is. Here's my input. So in my own journey with autoimmune conditions, several years ago, I listened to, either on YouTube I saw it, or I signed up for a webinar, I can't remember, but I listened to a course or a class given by Dr. Zach Bush. And Dr. Bush is a conventional Western trained medical doctor. He used to be in oncology research in Virginia, I think the University of Virginia, but in Virginia. And then at some point he decided to not do that so much anymore. And here's how he put it. I wanted to help people heal. I was researching how they were sick, and I wanted to help them heal. So now he's one of the leading experts on gut health, the microbiome. He does a ton of information on that. He has products on that to help people with their gut health. And he also is very spiritual. So his perspective was one of the first times that I heard this. And it had me thinking enough to start to okay, I need to find out more about that. So what he shared about autoimmunity was, when autoimmunity is when the immune system doesn't recognize the body that it's meant to protect, right? So we have this physical body, the immune system, which was very well designed. God knew what he was doing. He made this immune system to protect the body from invaders. And when somebody has autoimmunity, the immune system doesn't recognize the body that it's meant to protect. And so he said, what we see in people who have that is, spiritually, there's a disconnect from who they are, and a disconnect or an out of alignment in their spirit. And I was like, wow, let me think about that. And it set me on a particular trajectory, which I now know to be very, very true. And I want to expand on that a little bit. So again, say hi if you're listening in, and if I can see it, I'll respond back. So, okay, so spirituality, autoimmunity, codependency, because specifically, if you're just joining in, what I said at the beginning is I'm doing some work today on helping a client clear some emotions. We do emotional clearing, and she wanted to focus on codependency. And this particular client has more than her share of health issues. Okay. So codependency is when you don't depend fully on yourself, when you look for outside approval, outside opinions, outside acknowledgement, and even just outside help to do your life. So somebody who is codependent, and I absolutely was, I've done a lot of work on not being codependent anymore, and like, where did that come from, and all the things. And I grew up in an alcoholic household. I don't think it's possible to grow up in an alcoholic household and not become codependent, but it's not the only way that people become codependent. It's any time in your growth, in your development, that you don't get the full message and the full opportunity to know that you're okay just who you are, to know that you can handle your life, and to know that you're lovable, you're worthwhile, all of that. So when we're codependent, somewhere we've decided we can't really handle our life by ourselves. We must have somebody else's help or approval or whatever. Sometimes it's a specific someone, but if we have codependency with a specific someone, I would hands down, I would bet my house that it shows up in all areas of life. So it's not only in this one particular relationship, but it's in, how do I think I can take care of myself financially? How do I show up at work? Am I worried about what other people are thinking? So it's always worrying about the judgment of others, like that. When we heal that codependency, we bring ourselves back to center, back to wholeness. So wholeness means I know 100% the truth of who I am, which is I am no worse than anybody else. I'm no better than, and I'm no worse than anybody else. I can manage my life. I can, and here's why, because I can listen to my intuition. My North Star is God, and God communicates to me in my intuition and in my spirit, and I'm connected to that. I'm connected to that intuition, and I'm connected to that source. And when I have that, I'm connected to myself, and I'm whole. Wholeness exists. When people have significant health issues, they're lacking wholeness. When we are struggling physically, and I'm making it be about autoimmunity, but it's really about any chronic illness. It's when your physical body can't use the immune system the way God designed it, which was very spot on, like it's not really flawed, except that we've not taken care of it the way it needs to be in a lot of ways. But whatever the health issue is, autoimmunity or any chronic health issue, the immune system can't do its job physically because spiritually we're not whole. So we're not whole and complete in the systems of our body. When we're disconnected spiritually, the immune system actually shuts down because that is a state of stress and fear. If I don't know that I can handle my life, if I am worried about the judgment of others, if I need somebody else's approval, somebody else's acknowledgement, that means I'm looking out there, I'm not looking in here. And whenever I'm not looking in here, I'm disconnected from my soul. It's actually not even that hard to understand, right? I mean, it's like, oh, that really makes sense. So when I'm disconnected from my soul, then all the other parts of me are also out of whack. So there's the how the energy, our life force energy works, which would be a different conversation. There are the emotions that go into that, feeling helpless, having a lot of fear. That's another conversation. There's the thoughts that we think. That's another conversation, right? But the spirituality, being connected, is when all of those parts of us are all working together so that we can look inward. We do look inward. We know our compass is here, coming from there. God telling us, life force energy working, God telling us we're okay, us ourselves knowing we're okay. So let's look at that. 80 million people, if you want to look at it from the spiritual perspective, there's the other things to look at, how toxic our planet is, chemicals, whatever else you want to say, parasites, molds, all the things that can challenge our body. How can our body handle those things if we are so out of alignment and if we are so not centered and not whole? Once you bring yourself back to wholeness, now you can go after, mold toxicity, Lyme disease, chemicals, pesticides. You can go after, all the things that are challenging your immune system, but your immune system can't handle them if you're not whole and complete. So wholeness is the state of being that you need in order to heal your health. You have to get yourself back to wholeness. Then the things that you're doing for your health will work, which is really good news, I think. So what else did I want to say about that? If there are any questions, again, please pop them in and I'm certainly happy to answer them. So how do we get ourselves back to wholeness? Maybe I'll just go there for a minute and then I'll let you get on with your day. But the way to get back to wholeness, or how does that lack of wholeness come about? That's when we're wounded as children. Like I said, if you're just hopping on and you missed the beginning, I grew up in an alcoholic household. And it wasn't, my dad was an alcoholic, but I adore my dad. He wasn't, I was about to say he wasn't a bad dad, and he wasn't a bad dad, except that he was an alcoholic, which meant he wasn't there emotionally. He was checked out, and the way that he dealt with his life was he numbed himself with alcohol. That's what addictions are. It's a way of numbing the pain. So you might be addicted to Netflix or social media. It's no different than taking a drink, right? It's a way of numbing ourselves. So I grew up in an alcoholic household. And the things that dominoed effect from that, not feeling safe in my house, not because like physically safe, but just like you could tell, even little children can tell there's tension in this household. There's something that's not right. It's not helping me develop into like somebody who is strong in herself. So looking at the prevalence of alcoholic households, looking at 80 million people have autoimmune disease, looking at 3/4 of them are women, looking at the prevalence of codependency, people, and I'm going to say women, really needing somebody else to make sure their life goes the way it goes, and really like so focused out there on the judgment of people, on the approval of people. I'm not okay, I'm not good enough unless that person or all people tell me I am. Then I can feel okay. And as soon as that kind of isn't there, now I don't feel okay again. That's where the wounding is. That's where the wholeness or the lack of wholeness shows up. That's where you can go to work to bring wholeness back. You can bring wholeness back. You can, heal all of that and bring yourself full circle back to looking here for your guidance. You can. I did it. I do it with my clients. That's the reason I do what I do now, because I saw, I had 4 autoimmune diagnoses, 4. because after the first one, I didn't get better. I was on prescriptions. I went to the doctor. I was getting treatment, but I didn't get better. I didn't know that the way that I had grown up was contributing to my lack of wholeness. And so I didn't ever get more whole. In fact, I got less and less whole because as sickness showed up, I was like, oh, now there's something wrong with my physical body. Now, not only do I have all the thoughts and the wounding that I already had, like life isn't safe, I'm not okay, worried about what other people think, how am I showing up? But now my physical body is not okay. So now I'm getting more disconnected from my center, from my soul, from the certainty of myself. So now with more disconnection, what happens? Another autoimmune condition shows up. So I've been diagnosed with both Graves' disease and Hashimoto's, both. If you don't, I think a lot of people listening are very familiar with thyroid disease or thyroid autoimmunity because it's such a common thing. But if you're not, Graves' disease is when your thyroid, which is right here, and your thyroid is like the master regulator of your body. Think of it as like it regulates your metabolism, it regulates your energy, it regulates your moods. The thyroid hormone gets pumped out to every cell of the body and tells that cell, go ahead and do what you're supposed to do. Go ahead, process that food, create that energy. It works very much with the liver. It works with your hormone, your sex hormones, your estrogen, your testosterone, your sex drive. Thyroid is prevalent in all of that. So it's the master regulator, and it's like a thermostat. It's constantly hearing what your body's saying and then trying to adjust. Oh, too much now. Okay, let's back off. Oh, now you're upset. Let's pump out more. Whatever it is, it's constantly trying to maintain regulation. And it's also right here where we speak. That's not a coincidence that so many people have thyroid problems. Because if you're not connected to yourself and you're codependent and you need somebody else's approval, opinion to make sure to let you know that you're okay, you're not speaking your truth. There's going to be an issue in the energy going to the thyroid. There's going to be an issue here with how you speak your truth and show up in the world. So there's not one thing that doesn't affect everything else. They each affect each other. So I had Graves' disease, which is first hyperthyroidism, too much thyroid, too much, very fatigued. This was years ago. This was 28 years ago. And then at some point later on, I got Hashimoto's, which is low thyroid. And I remember asking the endocrinologist, how come I have like low? I used to have high. What's going on? And she said, well, that's just sometimes what happens with people. And now you need this prescription. Before you needed that. Now you need this. Okay. I still wasn't whole. I still had not had any connection to my soul and the way that I saw my safety in the world. So of course, things were still happening. And now I'm even more unwhole. What if somebody can know the, oh, hi, Lisa. Lisa says she has Hashimoto's. Yeah, it's such a common thing, Lisa. And it's mostly common for women. And all autoimmune disease, as I said, 3/4 are women. So I want to think of a word that means unwholeness, which I thought of holy, like having holes in it. That's not what I want to convey. So I'll just say lack of wholeness. Each time my life went on and I got the next diagnosis or the next thing happened in my life that made me feel uncertain, a divorce, a change in my circumstances that I didn't know if I could handle, something that brought more fear. Whenever we're fear and focused outward, we're not focused inward. We may pray to God, but we pray to God actually like a codependent relationship, just like we're doing with people. Please, God, take this and heal it. But it's from a place of codependency. I hope you can get what I'm saying, because I absolutely think prayer is amazing and having that connection to God. But when we're saying, you know, it's out there and not saying, please God, show me, please God, return me to my full strength. Please God, bring the power back into me to heal. That's different. I hope you can hear in the words and the energy behind the words how that's different. So with each thing in my life or each new health issue, I got further and further away from wholeness, more and more codependent on somebody else needs to help me. And the only place and the only way that we can heal is ourselves, is going back inward, healing whatever the wounding is. Whatever the wounding is. And we don't get through this life without wounding. We just don't. It may not look the same for everybody. You may not have 4 autoimmune conditions, but trust me, there's wounding there because that's what it is to be a human being. There's nothing, I just did a thing on that last week. It doesn't mean you're broken. There's nothing broken about you. It means you're human. But if somebody doesn't connect the pieces, you're like spinning your wheels in the mud. That's how it felt for me, spinning the wheels in the mud and not getting any traction or moving forward at all. So I hope that that's insightful. If you have any questions, please leave them. As I said, this all came from, I'm going to do an emotional clearing session for a client today. That's one of the things that I do with my clients. But a lot of the way I work is help people to bring themselves back to wholeness, to help them understand that, and it doesn't necessarily mean for health issues. Wholeness or lack of wholeness shows up in your relationships. Codependency is in your relationships. It's also, your body is the physical expression of that codependency or that lack of wholeness. It also shows up like in your finances and in your ability to freely enjoy your life, to feel joyful. So that's the work that we do so that people, it all comes back to, am I whole and centered? So that people can have the health that they want, or the relationships that they want, or the joy and purpose that they want, whatever it is. Okay? So if that's you and you have any questions, please drop me a comment. Thank you for listening. This is an episode of The Unconditioned Life, which is the podcast that I just launched at the beginning of the year. And the name really speaks to releasing the conditioning, releasing the pain and the patterns that are causing the lack of wholeness. So releasing that so that we can cause what we want, so that we can have the life that we want, uncondition ourselves from where we found ourselves. Okay, so have a great rest of your Sunday. I'm going to get to, oh, hi, Judy, very insightful. Awesome. Thank you for listening. I'm going to get to some of this energy clearing work with my client, and I'm going to wish you the rest of a great day. And I'm sure I'll see you this week with some coffee in the morning and some other things to think about. All right, have a great day. Bye.